So I think we can go home now. We're open. Thank you, Laura. So this is May, and we are leaning into the goddess energy this month. And not to worry, in June we're going to lean into the masculine energy. So we're going to balance the two out. And I think that May is appropriate for honoring the goddess and feminine energy because May is May Day, right? May Day, where you have the May baskets. And the origins of May Day started in Rome for the festival of Flora, or the goddess of flowers. And we have the Maypole dance and the May Queen, and of course we celebrate Mother's Day next week. So this is a very goddessy month. It's just filled with beauty. And I think I shared that a couple weeks ago. We went up to see the tulips, and there were so many photographers there that it was like the paparazzi for the tulips. And it wasn't just like little cell phone cameras. It was like, the big lenses and the expensive cameras and just buses of people. And you could almost see the flowers posing and going, "I'm ready for my close-up, Mr. DeMille," And there was such an energy coming from the flowers. It was like they were so happy. And then it infected the people, and the people were happy. And I thought, what a great thing this is. What a great experience that we have in the Northwest. And it's such a short window that it's so important to get up there and just to see it. So as I speak about the feminine principle this month, we recognize that I'm not talking about women, but I'm talking about the feminine principle that exists within both men and women. Llewellyn Vaughan Lee said that feminine consciousness is less dominated by reason, more open to the mystery of the symbolic inner world, and the feminine is vital in this work of awakening. So it's not that we don't use our reason, it's not that we don't use our logic, but in leaning into the feminine energy this month, we're more open to the magic, we're more open to the mystery, to the hidden meaning behind things. And it wasn't that long ago that when we talked about feminine energy or the intuition that people would kind of roll their eyes. Right? I'm not the only one. And I remember the first time I actually heard someone speak about women's intuition in a positive way was actually at Princess Diana's funeral, when her brother stood up and he said one of her great qualities was her intuition. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. And the feminine principle is receptive, it's connecting, it's empathic, it's intuitive, it's inclusive, and it's about connecting in relationships. And Star Trek, in its ultimate wisdom, created a character that embodied intuition and empathy in the form of Counselor Troi. Remember Counselor Troi? She's half human and half betazoid. She has psychic powers and she can sense emotions. Now, her gifts are so vital to the Enterprise that she is on deck along with who? With the captain, the first officer, with the navigator, and what is Worf? The security officer? Security officer. I mean, that's how important her role is in the running of the Enterprise. And when there is an encounter with an alien and they're not sure what the intentions are, Captain Picard will ask her, "So what do you sense?" And I've never known her to be wrong. She's usually always right, isn't she? And she also carries the confidence of the community on the Starship Enterprise. She holds the confidence. She helps people to discover what it is they're wanting to do or what it is they're feeling. She helps them to define that, and she holds that in confidence. So I think that in our world right now, that it's time for the feminine principle to become fully embodied in men and women. Don't you agree? It's time. Because for the Western tradition, in the Western tradition, the goddess kind of got lost about 4,000 years ago. Now, before that, goddess worship was pretty common. And, when we look at it as a progression in awakening, there's an awakening that happens about 4,000 years ago with the Israelites, and that is that there is only one God. There is one, before this, God is, God is in idols, right? And so it's not that there was a worship of goddesses necessarily and gods. It's that there was a belief that it was contained here, that this was the God and this was the goddess. And what the Israelites did is they broke that. And they said, no, God is contained in all. God is Jehovah, God is Yahweh, God's name cannot be spoken, and God is one within everything. But the challenge and the problem that happened with that is the goddess got tossed out. The baby got thrown out with the bathwater, and the goddess was systematically wiped out. There's a great story in the book of Genesis about Jacob and Rachel, when they're going home once again, because Jacob and Rachel were living with her father for many, many years. Jacob decided it's time to go home. And before they left, Jacob was taking some things, but Rachel stole the household gods because they were so important to her. And they were so important to her worship. And she was going off to a foreign land. She's going off to live with her husband and his one God, and she doesn't know what this is. And so she steals the household gods. And I want to share with you from the book of Genesis, the scripture. Laban is her dad. So Laban went into Jacob's tent and into Leah's tent and into the tent of the two female servants, but he did not find the household gods. And he went out to Leah's tent, and he entered Rachel's. Now Rachel had taken the household gods, and she'd put them in a camel's saddle, and she sat on them. Laban felt all around the tent, but he didn't find them. And she said to her father, "Let not my lord be angry, that I cannot rise before you, for the way of women is upon me." Sneaky, huh? She couldn't get up. He couldn't go near her. So she's hiding this household god. So he searched but did not find the household gods. It's a very touching story, and it shows how important the goddess was to so many people. And yet, we sort of lost it. And I think it culminated with the burning of the witches, the Salem witch trials, where women who were healers, women who were herbalists were burned at the stake for basically loving nature and being a part of nature. I think the goddess has been preserved in some ways in the Catholic Church with Mary in her many forms, different ways that she looks, and also in the many saints that the Catholics pray to. Right? So the goddess is sort of contained there. The goddess has been contained and saved, in a sense, in Hinduism. I mean, how many gods and goddesses do the Hindus have? They have for every male god, there's a female counterpart, yeah? And we have, the thing that I like about Hinduism is they have so many gods and goddesses. And it's not that they believe necessarily that there's that many gods and goddesses, because they believe in the one God as well. But what they believe is that God is so vast that God cannot be contained within one form or one word. So they have thousands of gods. So God can take on all different kinds of forms. So God can be Saraswati, the goddess of music. She can be Lakshmi, the goddess of luck and good fortune. She can be Kali, destruction, or Shakti, power. He can be Krishna, the flute player, or Shiva, the destroyer, or Vishnu, the preserver. So we see this complex, wonderful, rich world in seeing the different gods and goddesses. And of course, in Buddhism, she is contained in Kuan Yin. So what does the feminine principle look like in our daily lives, if we are, as Llewellyn Vaughan Lee says, that we are to lean into the feminine principle in our world, how does that show up and what does it look like? So I have a story that you may remember that happened in Redmond, Washington in 2004. And a young girl by the name of Laura, she was 17 years old. She went out for the evening, she took the family car, and she was supposed to be back at curfew, and she didn't come back. And her parents, being terrified, called the police. But because of things that were kind of going on in her life, they thought that she ran away. They said, oh, she just ran away and she'll be back. No, don't worry about it. Well, and this is before cell phones were very common, where you could ping them off a tower. So she was gone. So one day turns into 2 days turned into 3, 4, 5, and the family is getting increasingly freaked out. So they hired a private investigator, and they had about 200 volunteers that were walking through the woods trying to find her, and they couldn't find her. Well, one of her girlfriends from school was, of course, extremely upset, and her mom would have kind of these dreams, these intuitive dreams. And she kept dreaming that she saw these woods, and she'd be in the woods, and then she'd hear this voice that said, keep going, keep going, keep going. By the 8th day, Laura was still missing. And this woman woke up early in the morning, and she just had this urge that she just had to get out, and she had to start looking. So she asked her daughter, she said, do you want to go with me? And she said, yes. So they started driving around Union Hill Road, and just kind of driving and following her intuition. And then finally she stopped at this one place, and she felt like this is where I'm supposed to stop. So her daughter waited in the car, and she got out, she climbs over the concrete and down into the woods, and she goes down about 100 feet, and she looks around and she sees nothing. There's nothing there. And she's like, oh well. And as she turns around to leave, she looks back and she sees like metal through the woods. And it looked like modern art because it was so crumpled. And she realized that had to be the car. So she called back to her daughter to stop a vehicle and get somebody to come help. So they stop a car, and a guy comes down. And the two of them go down together. And they walk down, and it's the car. And the girl, Laura, is still there, and she's alive. 8 days, no water, no food. She's injured, and she's stuck in this car, and she can't get out. And the woman says to her, don't worry, we've been looking for you, and we've been searching everywhere for you. And Laura said, I think I missed my curfew. She was taken to Harborview, where she survived. And I share this story because it's an example of following one's intuition. She would tell her husband, I saw these woods, and he's rolling his eyes like, yeah, really? No, I really did. And she followed it, and she saved this girl's life. What I love about this is not a fictional story. This is not some episode from Star Trek. This is not something that happened in a primitive culture where they're more in tune with these kinds of things. This happened in Redmond, Washington. This happened in our own neighborhood. This happened in our own backyard. And it happened to ordinary people like you and I. It happened to ordinary people. So as we lean into the feminine principle, we're engaging this month also the anima mundi, the world soul. And the Earth Care team has asked that the first Sunday of every month be dedicated to the earth, rather than just thinking about it once a year, because the earth needs us to think about it a little more than once a year. They've asked us to engage. So you should have a little piece of paper in your bulletin, and if you don't, the ushers can bring it around for you. Raise your hand if you need it. And I'm not going to take you through a meditation necessarily, but keep your hand up if you need it. Roger will come around and get it to you. So what the Earth Care team has asked us to do in thinking about the earth, in engaging with the anima mundi, is what is one action step you will take to heal the earth. So perhaps it's riding your bike a little more, taking a shorter shower, not having meat every day of the week, composting. It doesn't matter what it is, but it's something that you're not doing yet, and it's something that you would like to do a little more. I would invite you can do it now if you'd like, write it down. And what they have also asked us to do is to sign this. There's something about signing our names that kind of solidifies it, doesn't it? That sort of ritualizes it. So, after you have written your action step, after you have signed it, at the end of the service, they have asked that we go to the library and hand it in. And you will get a corn bundle in return. And they've asked you can either take the corn bundle home or you can bury it in your yard. Why? It ritualizes it. You know, it's the same kind of thing of bringing Counselor Troi by joining in the magic, it's not logical, like, okay, well, what am I going to do with this corn bundle? It's like you're going to ritualize it. You're going to engage in this dance with the anima mundi. So remember what Llewellyn Vaughan Lee said, that the feminine isn't necessarily logical, but it's intuitive, and it seeks to engage with the inner mysteries of life. An example. So when I lived in West Seattle, I loved our house in West Seattle. But we had to move because my kids went to Waldorf, which was on the other side of town, and we were spending our lives in the car, so we had to move to the north end. But I really missed my house. And I missed it so much that I dreamed about it a couple of times a week. And what I would dream is that I would sit in my car in front of the house, and I would wait till the people who lived there left. And as soon as they left, I'd go into the house, and I'd watch TV, or I'd cook, or I'd do whatever. And then at 5 o'clock, when they were coming back, I would leave, you know? So I was stalking them in my night sleep. And this dream wouldn't stop, and I just really missed my house. So a friend of mine said, well, I know one of the things that you could do is you could go to the people who live there now, and you could ask them if you could have some of the dirt from their yard, and then you could take that with you. And I was like, I don't think I'm going to do that. I just don't think I'm going to knock on the door. So she did. She went to their house. And she knocked on the door, and she said, I have a friend who used to live here, and she can't let go of it, so would you mind if I went in the yard and took some of your dirt? And they said, sure, go ahead, whatever. So she brought me this little jar of dirt from my house, and she said, here, put this in your yard. And I wasn't ready to, and I just put it on a shelf, and the dream stopped right away. And it was almost as if I could settle into my new home and where I was, and eventually I was able to put the dirt also in the yard. Now, is that logical? No, it's not logical at all. But did it work? Yes. And there was something about that engagement with the world soul. There was something about that engagement with the anima mundi that spoke to me and my soul, and that healed whatever it was that needed to be healed. So the world, according to Counselor Troi, is one where we honor and listen to our emotions, empathy, inclusiveness, receptivity. Sue Monk Kidd, it's in your bulletin, Sue Monk Kidd said that the goddess teaches us to embrace the holiness of every natural, ordinary, sensual, dying moment. So it teaches us to embrace the ordinariness. So you're just going to write on a piece of paper what you're going to do, and you're going to sign it. That seems kind of ordinary. But taking that corn bundle and burying it engages into a different level, into a different world. It enters into the sacred. She goes on to say that if a consciousness truly is set loose in the world, nothing will be the same. It will free us to be in a sacred body, on a sacred planet, in sacred communion with all of it. And we will discover the divine deep within the earth and within the cells of our bodies. The feminine energy is more open to the mystery of the symbolic inner world. Engage in the anima mundi. Lean into the feminine energy as you look at the flowers and celebrate May, because you are a sacred body, and we live on a sacred planet. Make it so.